Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Priya, and I'm the marketing lead here at VTEX. So, a couple of reminders before we get started. As always, the recording of this webinar will be up on our website by the end of the week. I'll also be sending an email with that link to all the attendees, so you can watch it later or forward it to your colleagues. During the webinar, you can ask questions by typing them in the Q&A box or in the chat box. And at the end of the talk, I will unmute everyone so you can ask questions verbally if you choose to do so. Today's presenter is Michael Coe. He's the Director of Business Development here at VTEX. Going to go into the next slide. Sorry, give me a minute. Right. Okay, finally. So Michael is over 20 years experience in fiber optics engineering and sales. He was an engineer at Northrop Grumman and a product line manager at JDSU before joining VTEX. Michael holds a BS in optics from the University of Rochester and an MS from USC. So now over to Michael.
Okay, thank you, Priya. Okay, I appreciate everybody joining. Let me share my screen here. Just 1 second. Okay, so I hope everybody can my screen okay, right? Okay. Yeah, Priya just mentioned I spent like 20 years in fiber optics, and to be honest, that probably only 2 years was in engineering, 18 years was in sales and marketing. So maybe my technical knowledge might be a little rusty, but I thought that it would be good to share what we learned over the years and what kind of a trends we are seeing, especially in video over fiber. Okay, and feel free to ask any questions through the chatting box, and I think the Priya also will open up the mics at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, you can ask at the end of the presentation as well. Okay. Okay, so let's. I'm going to keep this very basic, and so let's just first talk about what is a video over fiber. So pretty simply, you have some type of a signal coming in from the left. Usually it's a digital signal, and below the picture here, I kind of listed, this will be the video, and internally we just call this electrical to light conversion. So you have an electrical video signal coming in, and typically this can be called a transmitter, source, or laser. In short, we can call it TX or T. So that's kind of internal jargon or industry terminology that you'll see. But that's essentially it's electrical to optical conversion. And of course, you actually have optical fiber cable. And again, that can be, you're going to hear the terms multimodal fiber, single modal fiber. And also there are different type of connectors that different players may use on LC connector, on SC connector. There's also something new that we think is actually very useful, which is something called MPO connector. And that might be actually all others. I mean, I'm sure you heard of SD connectors, but probably these are the most common connectors you're going to run into in video over fiber application. And of course, once the video gets converted into light, propagate through the optical fiber, the other side, you need to convert it back to electrical signal. So that'll be an OE converter. So we actually have a detector with associated circuitry. So again, we can call it receiver, or sometimes you just call it display because it's on the display side. And and that obviously gets shows up on your screen, the monitor screen or TV. So in every system that's essentially what it is, and it's a simple representation. But you can most likely you'll see DVI, HDMI, DisplayPort, SDI, or there can be others. But this is the kind of quick overview of what we mean by video over fiber. So why people use this? Clearly the number one reason, and the reason that optical fibers are being deployed in communications all over the world is because of the bandwidth. So because of the inherent properties, the way they designed it, the glass fiber can transmit amazing amount of data and information. So that's probably the number one reason. And especially for many industrial, commercial, or business applications, you want to clearly that you don't have a much need for fiber if your video source is next to your display. But if it's a few hundred feet or even a few kilometers, then clearly the distance is an important factor where fiber gets considered. And some of the fiber products, you can literally go up to 10 kilometers, depending on how you design it. And the other aspect that we see more often in maybe medical and defense applications has to do with security and safety. As many of us know that it's almost impossible to tap into optical fiber because it's just a light. So there's really no electrical interference. And as you can imagine, if a customer who's involved in, let's say, MRI, which uses a tremendous amount of a magnetic force for the medical imaging, clearly that you don't have any electrical interference, any electric field around it. So in that case, it's not even a distance. It's just physically, or I guess by technology requirement, they need to have optical fiber. The other factors, which is actually very useful, is fibers are actually very compact. So it's a small size, lightweight, and there are many fibers now very rugged. And you see fibers, in your IT space, big data centers, underground, over the electrical wire lines for cable TV. So there are really a lot of different fibers that's rugged and being deployed in pretty much in all different applications. And the last point I want to make is, as everything is going over Ethernet-based networking, all of those infrastructure is more or less based on fiber. So the video over fiber lends itself well into being integrated into overall networking system. So this is just a quick slide to show you the advantage of optical fiber in terms of the distance. So let's say you have a 4K HDMI video signal. Roughly speaking, your typical HDMI cable maybe can go up to 10 meters, and that'll be fine for your home TV applications. But again, for many other applications, they require much longer distance. Like multi-mode fiber can support up to 300 meters, and single-mode fiber, which has even more benefits in terms of distance and less dispersion, you can literally go up to several kilometers. I personally have been involved in this video over fiber, maybe starting from, I want to say 2006, 2007. So I've been in the business in this video over fiber, I guess almost 15 years. And this is just my personal observation, kind of brief history of video over fiber over the years I've been involved in. So initially, 10, 15 years ago, it was a really standalone development outside of the mainstream communication space. So maybe it's a DVI, it was more popular back then. So DVI, I mean, this particular picture is the DVI over fiber. So this is your DVI connector that gets connected, and that this is a single fiber, happens to have an LC connector. So this is where the fiber gets connected, and this is a potential power supply in case that your display or TV doesn't have a proper power source through one of the pins. But anyway, I mean, this is kind of what it looked like. So when we are looking at this 10, 15 years ago, mostly those are DVI, dual-link DVI for business and industrial applications, and some HDMI for residential. In terms of actual optics, inside these packages, we predominantly used 850 nanometer based pixel device. So this is a laser source, very commonly available, typically designed for multimode fiber, uses an LC or SD connector. I think this is an LC connector, and relatively short distance. And including ourselves, that we had specialized manufacturers, we saw in the US, Japan, Germany, and Korea 10, 15 years ago. But now that you see numerous suppliers and manufacturers, especially in Asia, in China, and these days you can even buy like HDMI cable or HDMI optical cable on Amazon, right? You can Google this and find it. Typically that's for residential applications, but clearly there's more demand and also more availability of video over fiber solutions. So let's actually talk about the trends, which is the main topic of this talk. So what trends we are seeing? No surprise, there is a big convergence of AV and IT. Before it was, I wouldn't say independent, but more or less they acted their own, they had a different standard, but definitely there's more convergence in AV and IT, and people want to have a more unified approach. And typically, more often than not, it's based on a fiber optic based approach. And we are definitely seeing new products leveraging technologies already developed for much larger telecom datacom space. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more detail. A lot of this has to do with the borrowing or leveraging technologies from communication space, such as using more single mode fibers. Way back then, multi-mode fiber maybe was a little cheaper, easier to integrate, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, there's a far more demand for single mode fibers in communication space. Prices are cheaper. There are a lot more interesting solutions available. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And of course, the trend has been, Ethernet, that people want to do everything over IP. And also that because of a higher resolution, 4K, people are already talking about 8K, even beyond. So, you need a higher bandwidth solution to transport that kind of information or video signals. So you are seeing more wider adoption in different and diverse applications. So let's actually talk about some of our trends in more detail. So I first talked about the AV and IT convergence. And I mean, rather than just talking about it, I thought that it would be good to show you a quick video. So give me 1 second. Let's see. I want to make sure that you guys can hear the sound as well. So give me 1 second. Let me turn on the sound. And this is just to give you a quick introduction. Corning recently developed their own. They built their headquarters in, I think, South Carolina or North Carolina, and they kind of put everything into integrated approach. And I thought this was a good introduction of kind of a trend we are seeing.
Welcome, my name is Jason Green. I run the solution architecture team here at Corning. Today I'm sitting in one of our conference rooms in our new Charlotte headquarters building where we've deployed a smart building infrastructure throughout. I'm going to focus on the conference room AV connectivity today. So what I have here, this is our software-defined access node. This software-defined access node is serving the network connectivity for this conference room, like touch panels, like scheduling panels, conference phones, etc. This is our 4K video receiver. So this is providing a 4K video to the conference room flat panel displays that we have throughout the building. This is one of about around 100 setups that we have throughout this building. What we
I'm not going to go through the whole video, but I kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that you are seeing. So I thought this was a good quick glimpse of what you can see happening in the AV and IT conversions based on fiber optic infrastructure. Okay, so let me go back to the presentation. Just 1 second. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see the PowerPoint presentation again. And the other big trend, this is just a picture I got from a typical data center. Especially in the last 5-7 years, Google, Netflix, or Facebook, I mean, you name it, everything is on internet these days. And to support this huge demand for the bandwidth and information all over the networking, there's a big investment made, billions and billions of dollars in data centers and optical networking. So this is a kind of a picture you'll see at a huge data centers. So I guess what I wanted to mention was that there has been a lot of investment made in communications, and there's a lot of useful and interesting technologies from the space. I mean, in terms of a laser source, connectors, fibers. So I think it's a better. Clearly, it makes sense to leverage those kind of technologies. So this is a very top-level view, but the kind of a trend we are seeing is from multi-model-based solution to more of a single-model-based solution, because that's where the really interesting technologies and bandwidth benefits really lie. And lasers from 850 pixels to mobile 1310 and 1550 lasers, again, to take advantage of a single model fiber capability. And these lasers also, the cost came down a lot in the last 5-7 years. And connectors, I'm not saying that, clearly not everything just going to convert into all on the right side of the column right away, but in terms of a trend, we are seeing the more of different connectors than on LC and SC, especially the MPO connectors are pretty interesting to look at. And in terms of form factors, everything has been before, that's the standalone boxes, or all-in-one built-in cables, and those are still available. But especially for those customers who are working on video over IP, there are a lot of standard transceiver formats available. They can accommodate 1 gig to all the way to, if you want, like 100 gig or even 400 gig. I mean, such 400 gig per second, it's a huge amount of information, and all those transceivers available in standard packages. So in terms of, I want to kind of show also one more video to just talk about some of these interesting things, especially to highlight this MPO connector, originally developed for data center applications, because data centers, as you saw, there are a large number of fibers, so they want to have a good, reliable, rugged connector that can accommodate still multiple strands of a fiber in a single compact cable. And so I thought this was, we have an example of a product that takes advantage of that MPO connector. And let me share the screen. Okay. So again, I'm not going to show the whole video, but just to highlight some of the interesting technologies and components we borrow from telecom space. So this particular one, this happens to be DisplayPort extender over fiber. And of course, this is a DisplayPort side. And this is actually an MPO connector adapter. And you are looking at actual MPO connector, and there's an adapter, and it looks very simple, but it's very rugged, precise, and it ensures a very tight connection. And this is actually connecting one end of MPO connector to another through an adapter. And that was it, right? You had the one end of the, and again, that it, it looks very simple, but that's the whole point, right? If you're in the data centers, you are doing fiber connection literally like hundreds of times a day per technician, and you want to have a reliable, good quality connector that doesn't break and ensures the proper connection. So, clearly it makes sense to leverage the kind of products and technologies also into video over fiber space. So let me get back to the okay. So hopefully you can see the screen okay, the PowerPoint. So let me know, Priya, if you don't. But that was a kind of one example of leveraging the technology from communications space. This is actual product example that I wanted to share. So this is on KVM extender over the particular MPO connector-based fiber cable. And this one, because there's a lot of flexibility intuited. So you can have a DisplayPort or HDMI for the video. You can add multiple USB ports or the Ethernet if you desire, RS-232, and other options. You can add an AR, audio, or Toslink. So it's really kind of you choose what you want to do, and then and you can have the all-in-one, mainly for KVM applications, but it's over MPO-based fiber optic cable. So to have a better look at it, you actually see that MPO connector. So we talked about way in the beginning, T stands for transmitter. So this is obviously on the video source side. So you have a HDMI video signal coming in, and you may have a USB or you may have an Ethernet, and all that gets actually converted into light signal and propagates and comes out here. And this is where the electrical to optical converter resides, right? And then it goes through, and you are looking at the end of the fiber optic cable, but obviously that propagates through however meters or feet of a cable. Then the other side you have a similar looking receiver that convert all the video, USB or Ethernet or whatever you desire into proper native signal from light back to electronic domain. Right? So all of that is actually, in a way, all the underlying lasers, connectors, is largely borrowed from communications space. So that's a big trend we are seeing, which I think it's exciting. In terms of applications, at least from our perspective, we see a number of medical customers who's been using fiber optic solution for a number of years for all the reasons we discussed. So this is the DisplayPort extender, and this is actually the cable, fiber optic cable itself. So when I showed you the video of MPO connector to connector through an adapter, we were doing this. So that's one end of the connector and through an adapter.
Michael, there's a question. So I think it's about this MPO, whether is the MPO on the transmitter a 2-fiber? I think that's on the X link.
I'm sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
The MPO on the transmitter, is it a 2-fiber?
So actually the MPO, technically MPO, this type of MPO actually has this particular case that you saw has 12 fibers built in. So the MPO, if you look at it, you're going to actually see 12 very small holes. So there are actually 12 fibers through that connector, but it's all within one cable jacket, right? So I'm not sure, I hope that answered the question. So that actually allows you can send a lot of different information, different signals, because you got all these multiple fibers already built in the cable. Okay. All right. Okay. I hope that answered the question. Yeah, so that's what the actual fiber cable looks like. I don't know, maybe this might be 100 feet of a fiber optic cable in a spool. And then this particular case, you are seeing DisplayPort dongles. This is the DVI one that I showed you earlier when we talked about the history. So some of these are actually being used for flight simulation applications. Okay, that's so as I mentioned, the medical space, we've seen a lot of active use of fiber optic solutions. Control rooms, as you can imagine, uses a lot of fiber optic solutions, like power plants, utilities, big enterprises. Flash simulation is another interesting application. We had an interesting customer who uses electron microscope imaging transfer through fiber optics. And then we supply some of these optical SFP plus transceiver for some digital media interface to some of our OEM customers. I mean, there are, just to give you some perspective, there are also a lot of applications for residential, like home theaters, you can imagine. But we don't particularly play in this space because just we thought that our products and performance probably makes more sense for business and commercial applications. So based on our history and what we are seeing in the marketplace, our recommendations to any customer is that first, it's good to have a clear understanding of your needs and requirements. So clearly that there are certain things that you want to data or video or signal that you want to transmit from point A to point B. I mean, that's one thing, but you can also have a solution where you can have everything in just one cable, all built in a way, but maybe that detachable solution may more make sense. So again, depending on your requirements and your needs. And we still run into some customers that they think that single mode fibers are difficult to handle or more expensive, that multi-mode fibers are way to go. And we tell those customers that all the myths are just that, just old. Things change, especially in technology space. I mean, we all know that like every month there are new products coming out, and usually, not always, but usually it's for better because they incorporated the latest things and they fix the past mistakes. Usually, so in terms of a cost for performance, it's much better solution for many different products out there. So we definitely recommend our customers, do some survey and find out what's available. I mean, there are a range of now products. I mean, that's why we say third recommendation is finding right product for your application. It's asking right questions. I mean, for example, I mean, our product is great, but we wouldn't recommend the product if somebody wants to use, they have a great TV and they want to, they maybe video source happen to be a little farther away. I mean, for that type of application, there are plenty of good products available, even on Amazon or wherever. So probably some of our products might be an overkill for that type of application. But if a medical, like some of our products have to go through extra compliance for medical certifications, the electrical interference and emission testing. So usually, for your application, all the questions regarding what performance you need, cost is obviously always important, reliability, what type of a compliance that you may need for your application, the life cycle or the lifetime of the product is important, and of course the technical and customer support is important. So all of them are important considerations. So with that, that was a very short overview, but at least that I just wanted to give you some flavor of some of the products and trends we are seeing in the marketplace. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Wait for questions now. I'm going to unmute everybody.
Okay, yes, I guess somebody, if anybody wants to ask a question directly, please. Yes, Rich.
Oh yeah, I had a question in trends in video over fiber. What kind of percentage of your business resides in the standalone cable versus the transceivers? Excuse me, the transceivers, i.e., video over internet protocol. Do you kind of have a general breakdown of that within your customers?
I'm sorry. So you are saying the cable product versus a box product? Is that what you're asking? Or?
Correct. Cable products versus transceivers, video over internet protocol, IP. You said you OEM a lot of your.
Yeah, I mean, so if I understand the question correctly, so cable products, I think that, I don't know the exact number, but I think I mean, what I actually personally call the customer solutions, where you have converters at either end and you run the fibers in between. But that type of solution is probably, I would say, 70% of our business, and the other 30% is more everything in one cable, or active optical cable, whatever you want to call it. That's probably, I would say, about 30%. That'll be my guess.
Thanks.
Okay, sure. Okay, any other questions? All right. Okay, Priya, I think that's it.
Yep. So thanks everyone for joining us today. So if you have any questions on today's topics or any of our products, you can email us info@vtextech.com. If you're in New Jersey, phone number is 201-296-0145. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everybody, for joining.